If you want to know whether you should specialize in a particular species, or how a song can change your career and get you into wildlife filmmaking, or how you go from Silicon Valley to become a marine cinematographer, then you are in the right place, because my guest today is going to tell you all these things. My guest is Andy Casagrande IV, or his full name is Andy Brandy Casagrande IV. And I have a funny story to tell you about Andy. Before I do that, let's just have a think about what Andy is. Andy is he's like a cross between a man and a mermaid, which I guess would make him a merman. Andy is a merman. He spends more time under the ocean than he does topside. He swims with great white sharks. He films great white sharks from cages and also outside of cages. He's a huge advocate for sharks and the need to conserve them. And not only is he a marine cinematographer, so is his wife. And his children are also getting in on the game as well. I've just seen recently on his social media that his kids are now taking their scuba diving tests and becoming divers as well, which is fantastic. Now, I haven't actually met Andy in the flesh, but after our chat, after recording this episode, you'll hear within this episode that Andy and I were in the same place filming the Sardine Run back in 2006. And he was there with a certain network. I was there filming for a show, Wild Events. And we were only there for 5 days. And we realized that basically we were talking about the same people. That's when I met Bob Cranston, another cinematographer who's sadly passed now. But we realized we were at the same place at the same time. Anyway, so after the podcast recording ended, we were having a laugh about the fact that we were in the same place at the same time, and we didn't realize that we didn't actually meet each other. And then we signed off, and about an hour later, I get an email from Andy, and he sent me a picture of him and Bob Cranston on the boat, out on the beach, just before they're heading out to go and film the Sardine Run. And I look at it and I think, gosh, that's so similar to some of the pictures I have. And so I thank him and say, hey, here's some pictures I took of the same trip while I was there. Now, I didn't have any pictures of me. I wasn't into doing selfies and stuff at that time. And just, I would just take kind of scenic shots. And so the only shot I had that was kind of similar to show that, hey, yeah, I was in the same place, same time, was a shot of some boats on the beach and the crews next to our boat. And so I sent this picture off, and it had some people in it and the boats, and it looked very similar to Andy's shot. I get an email back literally within about 10 minutes, and Andy's going, "Oh my gosh, that's me in the picture. You just sent me a picture of me that you took." And sure enough, I've got a picture of him. I think Charles Maxwell's in the picture, maybe I think Bob Cranston's there as well. And they're all just chatting by their boat, and I'm just taking random scenic shots of the beach. So I sent him a picture of him with me standing, 15, 20 feet away from him at the same time while we were there back in 2006. So there we go. We had never met in the flesh, although we stood about 15 to 20 feet away back in 2006 while we were both filming the Sardine Run. So there we go. This was a great chat. Loved every minute of it. I could have carried on speaking to Andy for the best part of 8 hours. It didn't go on that long. It did go on longer than this podcast, which is about an hour long, right? So there's another 20 minutes or so. I think it's like 23 minutes. If you want to hear the extra content, then head on over to patreon.com/MWFP. That's Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast. Patreon.com MWFP. That's where all the extra stuff is. If you sign up, it is the best way to help support this podcast. It helps me keep bringing you these amazing guests on the podcast. It also, I'm considering doing these every 2 weeks. I've said this before. I really want to get this to be a bi-weekly podcast instead of once a month. So if you can help out, we can make that happen. You're going to get extras like this extra 20 minutes of the podcast with Andy and I. There's also catch-up conversations on there where I go and speak with past guests for anywhere from half an hour. They're basically full podcasts. Some of them are an hour long. They're full podcast episodes with previous guests, catching up with them to find out what they've been doing since I last spoke with them. So best way to help out and support the podcast, patreon.com/MWF. Check out all the tiers, check out all the bonus and the extras and everything you get when you join the Patreon family. I would really appreciate it. All right, there it is. Let's get on with the interview after a word from our sponsor. This podcast is proudly powered by Battle-Born batteries. Let the power of lithium take you on your journeys across the outdoor world. Battle-Born Batteries is the industry's top choice for lithium-ion batteries. Reliable, safe, and long-lasting, Battle-Born makes the sustainable and lightweight drop-in replacement for traditional lead-acid batteries. Are you ready to make the switch to lithium and switch to green energy? If so, all batteries are in stock now, and you can shop today at battlebornbatteries.com. Hey, Andy. Hey, man, thanks so much for taking the time out to be on the podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing really well, man. I'm sorry it took so long to line this up, but I'm really excited, and I appreciate your patience.
Hey, that's all right. You're a busy man. I mean, most of the time I think I've tried to get in contact with you, you're probably 15 meters under the surface of the ocean. So I get it. It's okay. Yeah. I appreciate you being available now.
That's where I love to be. You got it, man.
And it looks like you're in an awesome workshop there because you've just got like camera gear and aqualungs and all sorts of fun stuff behind it. That's like a diving filmmaker's dream right there.
This is my official man cave. It's essentially my garage, but no cars are ever allowed in here. Right. But yeah, I built a lot of gadgets in here. I go here to escape and just dig deep into the tech. And also just my son likes to engineer stuff. I got 3D printers. A bunch of Home Depot style, tools or whatnot. I'm a total hack engineer, but I love doing it. And that's a huge part about the business, about the industry. As you know, if you can build cool things and innovate and get cool shots that other people can't and share that knowledge as well, then you're going to be much better off and you're going to get more phone calls, more jobs. I keep getting these texts roll through. I should have hit the do not disturb button, but
that's all right.
We're good.
I mean, we'll get to that because resourcefulness as a camera person in this industry is everything. If you don't know how to problem solve in the field when you're out on a boat or in the middle of Africa and you can't get stuff working, then you're done, right? So we'll get to that. I want to get to the tech side of things. But first of all, the way I start most of these is just to get to know you a little bit and find out your journey from where it all began for Andy. So what was it that led you into this lifestyle, this career? How did it all start?
I often tell people it was completely by accident. It was my greatest mistake of my life, so to speak, because I never ever planned to become a wildlife filmmaker, cameraman, director, whatever. I never planned to get into filmmaking. It happened by complete accident because I chased my passions for specifically great white sharks. I was born in New York City in 1977. And as soon as I had the cognition, the ability to understand things, I'm watching TV, reading books, whatever, and I saw my first great white shark on television. And I at first didn't believe it. I thought it was fake because your parents always tell you, don't believe everything you see on TV. If Superman jumps off a bridge, it doesn't mean you can. So when I saw these great white sharks jumping out of the water, smashing into boats, doing all this amazing stuff, I just thought it was fake. And I didn't even know what CGI was back then. But quickly, as I watched more of these films, I read more books, I started seeing these sharks in other areas just from television. I realized they were real. I would go to museums and there would be pictures of sharks or statues or replicas. And it was just it completely absorbed me completely. So ever since I was a little kid, I just had a fascination with sharks. And I know a lot of people like that, or a lot of people that contact me today. They're like, man, that's all I think about is sharks. So I basically, long story short, I did. As I got out of high school, I decided I was going to be a marine biologist because I wanted to study sharks. I went to Florida Tech, did 1 year of marine bio. It really wasn't for me. I got straight A's. I was able to memorize stuff, regurgitate it, but it wasn't that interesting. The calculus, the chemistry, the biology was cool. But anyway, I peeked into the graduate students window, 5th and 6th year marine bio, and they're in a lab writing papers, publishing. And I'm like, I can't do the scientific academic route. I switched my major to psychology because my mom was a paranoid schizophrenic. Just fascinating to me. She would sometimes not recognize us and pull out a butcher knife and threaten us just very briefly until somehow we would speak to her or she would somehow snap out of it and recognize it. Not to try to demonize my mom in any way. She was really interesting. And I think I apply a lot of that to my work with sharks because people are afraid of sharks and they wield weapons as well. And they look scary. But if you understand them and they understand your motives and vice versa, you can survive just fine. You can get along. You can coexist. You can have an amazing relationship. And I had an amazing relationship with my mom. But anyway, I learned a lot. Long story short, I know I keep saying that.
Oh, you're good. We got plenty of time, so don't worry.
Okay. But I then I graduated with a degree in psychology and a minor in biology, and I did not use it. Well, that's not true. I immediately then went into software. My brother was working at a software company out in California and offered me a job working as a tech support engineer. So like anything I do, I took it in full stride. I got my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineering certificate. I started doing networking, ghosting machines around the world. I worked in London. I met Damien Hirst randomly on a houseboat and partied with him while I was doing IT
Did you
stuff.
see his cut up shark?
Yes, I went to I think it was called the Pharmacy in Notting Hill or Notting Hill. And he gave me one of his little Zippo lighters. At the time he was painting the planes of British Airways with butterflies and spots, and he gave me this awesome Zippo with butterflies on it.
Wow.
And there's some other stories with Damien that were pretty wild, but long story short, that was the most exciting part about the IT. The computer work was really kind of like monotonous, and they're computers. You tell them what to do, they do it. And then sometimes they don't, and you update the firmware and apply some patches and you're good. But anyway, that whole time I was working out in Silicon Valley, I was good enough at my job that I could do it all and then have like 3 hours a day still at work researching sharks. So while my bosses weren't watching, Google was just starting to explode. The internet was really exploding. I learned about great whites, where I could find them, where I could research them. I decided to learn how to scuba dive, and I got my certification in Monterey Bay. And on my very first open ocean scuba dive, I lost my scuba instructor and my dive master because my mind drifted off to great white sharks. Right. And as they were doing their skills, I turned around just looking for sharks, hoping one might show up. And then I turned around and they were gone. I'm like, wow, this is a great way to start my diving career by losing all of my dive buddies and the instructor.
Wow.
Anyway, I then...
How old were you at that point? Just
I was 20 years old when it was the year 2000. I'm 44 right now. I'm not good at math. So was I 20 or 22?
20 years ago, 22?
Yeah, I think I was 22 years old.
2020, yeah, 22,
but it was the year 2000, and that changed my life, just having that experience of breathing underwater and seeing the underwater world. I mean, people always use that. It changed my life, but it was the coolest thing ever because now I was sharing the same liquid space with these apex predators that I so badly wanted to see, and I still had never seen one except for on television. But I then... while again I was working at a software company, I wrote this funny song called the Great White Shark Song, and I sent it out. It's on YouTube.
Yeah,
Doesn't have many hits.
I've seen it. It's on my favorite page.
Hey,
so,
thanks.
Yeah.
I wrote it to kind of, it's meant to, tell the story of what I would do if I was a great white shark. And it talks about being misunderstood and humans being aggressive, and then me making mistakes sometimes. And then the take home message is like, if you don't respect the ocean, you don't respect the sharks, then we're not going to respect you. It's sort of a bit of an anthropomorphification, but whatever. Yeah. So I sent that to research teams in Australia, South Africa, and the USA. The USA barely responded. It was out at the Farallones. They sent me like a newsletter that talked about whales. And I was like, okay, clearly didn't read my email. And then, but I had no experience. So I was offering, I'm a tech support guy. I can help build your shark network. I mean, I had nothing to offer really other than this Great White Shark song. Yeah, so there was a research team in South Africa. The Australians are like, yeah, mate, cool song, but you know, we hate Americans. Not really, but they're pretty much like, hey, we're all good. We're pretty much Aussie down here. We're doing our thing.
Yeah.
But I found a research team in Cape Town, South Africa, which was run by a Swiss scientist, actually, Michael Scholl. He's one of my best friends, and he invited me down, even though they had no space. He thought my song was really funny. I was passionate. Long story short, he invited me down to work as an unpaid research cameraman for the White Shark Trust. When I say cameraman, I was taking stills back then, dorsal fin identification, because every great white has a unique dorsal fin, like a print or a fin print. And that is what changed my life, because when I moved to South Africa, saw my first great white shark for real, I was like, holy fucking shit, this is unbelievable. Yeah. And I instead of staying for 3 months, I ended up staying for essentially 3 years. I did have to leave to renew my visa. I backpacked around Africa, hitchhiked around to get, leave the country, come back in, to the point where they're like, hey, dude, you can't come back in like this again. So the research team applied for a research visa, which I got. And then I went there. And then National Geographic, Discovery Channel, the BBC, everyone was going to Cape Town to film great white sharks. Yeah. And I just so happened to get really lucky. And, it's also about creating your own luck. As you know, you can't just sit there hoping that your life is going to change and incredible things are just going to come out of the blue. Sometimes maybe you bought Bitcoin a long time ago and you're a billionaire. But bottom line is National Geographic came down to make a documentary, and they offered me a staff job at the end of the film shoot. I wasn't even supposed to be on it, but my best buddy, Mike Scholl, said, hey, can Andy come as a safety diver? He's pretty handy with the camera too. And I was served as a safety diver for the main cameraman, the DP, another best friend of mine, Andy Mitchell, amazing. He's a great guy. You should have on this as well. He's won multiple Emmys. He looks like Russell Crowe. He acts like Russell Crowe, but he films like one of the best DPs in the world. Really awesome sound guy. But I worked under him as assistant. They offered me a staff job. I moved to Washington, D.C., and that's what exploded my career, so to speak. They sent me to do polar bears, great white sharks, killer whales, crocodiles, all the apex predators. And you had mentioned earlier about asking about my wife, Emma. One of the most romantic love stories that I know is that I was on a 105-day assignment in the Serengeti National Park in Tanzania, making a film called Super Pride about the largest pride of lions in the Serengeti National Park, arguably the largest pride of lions in the world at the time. Now I think Zambia, they found some bigger ones. But bottom line is, after about 2.5 months into the shoot, these 3 Swedish girls and 1 Finnish, let's just call them 4 Swedish girls showed up. There were really 3 Swedes and 1 from Denmark, maybe. Yeah. And they ended
4
up
Scandinavians.
I called them the Swedish bikini team, basically, because it was me and 2 other cameramen, because it was a long assignment, and I was I wasn't quite an A cameraman yet. I was shooting the Phantom. I was shooting a lot of time lapse, a lot of the inserts, and then we would have other big DPs come in and doing a lot of the super long lens, the boring stuff, in my opinion. I got to do the fun gadget stuff. And,
yeah, right.
So anyway, my wife, Emma, shows up with her friends. They end up at our film camp, which is called Tawiri, the Tanzanian Wildlife Research Institute. And that was the only place they could find to stay. Their driver knew someone there. They came, and then me and these 3 other guys, like when the girls showed up, of course, we couldn't control ourselves. We were like a pack of hyenas surrounding like a gazelle or a little herd of gazelle. And the girls picked up on that, because we were trying to there was plenty of space in the house for them to sleep, but we had taken over the whole compound. So we're moving out of each other's rooms, trying to make a place where they could sleep in their own room, in their own beds or whatever. And they could see that we hadn't seen females in 2.5 months. And they're like, you know what? We're going to sleep outside in a tent. And we're like, you're going to sleep outside in a tent? We're here making a film about the largest pride of lions in Africa that live here in this territory. Hyenas, leopards. There's all kinds of shit that can kill you. They're like, yeah, we're going to sleep outside. So they were clearly freaked out. But long story short, they were staying for 2 nights. The next night when we came home from filming, we were there. And we played our cool guy cards. We were less interested. Yeah, hey girls, what's up? We're just downloading the kills that we got today. Oh, do you want to see? So we played it way more cool. And long story short, geez, I gotta stop saying that. Emma and I, We really hit it off. We only knew each other for about those roughly 24 hours, 48 hours. But we sort of fell in love at first sight. And then we constantly kept in touch. I stayed for the remaining end of the month. She went off with her friends to Zanzibar, and we were flirting by text. And then we did that for about 6 months. And then finally she's like, I got to come see you. I got to come to America. So she flew over, happened to watch the Dexter marathon on the plane. And she's like, wait a second. I've only known this guy for a short time. He kind of looks a little bit like Dexter. What if he's a serial killer?
Andy,
anyway.
I've got to stop you 1 second because you're talking about Dexter.
Oh,
you've split your lip.
Oh my God.
Dexter.
Holy shit. So I am Dexter. Holy, that couldn't have been time better.
That was such good timing, man. That was
listen, I'm just going to wipe it off because actually, we'll talk about that growing up and bleeding. I remember being a big fan. That is hilarious. How did I not know
It was so good. You got onto Dexter as blood started trickling down. You split your lip.
Oh, my God. Oh, hilarious. Okay, well,
that was
couldn't have timed that better. That was pretty good.
That was really good.
But anyway, I'll move on from the romantic.
Well, I love that because I met my wife filming black bears in Tahoe. So I was filming with National Geographic. Came over from the UK, met her for 4 days, and then it was such a, we had such a kind of a thing going on after 4 days of just knowing each other. I mean, nothing happened, but then a year later, our producer hired her to come into the jungle for 3 weeks and film with us. So we ended up spending 3 weeks in the Amazon Peruvian jungle, and that was it.
So
and then
cool.
I gave everything up and moved over here. So that was like 14, 15 years ago.
That's so cool. Yeah, and for the record, nothing happened with me and Emma, too. She was a total, I was doing my best to be a gentleman, and she was a total, madam or whatever you call, whatever. Yep. But yeah, man, that's really cool. That's very cool. I mean, because that's a big thing now with just working as a filmmaker. You have to balance life, your family life or your personal life and your work life, because as you know, especially the BBC jobs, you're out in the field for months at a time away. You're sitting in a hide or you're far off on sat phone only. And like, it can be really taxing on relationships. Yeah. And when I first worked, I was living under my desk in National Geographic. I gave up my apartment because I was never there and I got sick of paying rent. Living out of a North Base bag. I had a mountain bike in DC, bike around. And then, but when I met Emma, like I realized, hey, there's more to life than just sharks and lions and polar bears. But that's also how I made my living. But when I met her, she was a fashionista hairstylist from Stockholm. And I sort of trained her up as a photographer, just trial by fire. And she's now an excellent photographer. She's been out of the cage with great whites, tiger sharks, hammerheads, almost got decapitated by a tiger shark, which was a pretty sketchy ass story. But she's still alive. We have 2 kids now, and I balance out work and family life as best I can. I think I've gotten a lot better at it over the years. While
we're on that, let's talk about that very quickly because it's so important. One of the things that I've done with my life, my career, is I've taken different avenues from a lot of people because I want to have a family life. I don't want to be the guy who's out there for 10 months of a year, not with my family. And so I have a 5 and a 9-year-old, and I decided, they come first in terms of making sure that we enjoy our life together. And then I'm going to work everything else in around it. And so I'm doing all sorts of other things within, I'm not doing so much international travel anymore. I reduced that down because I don't want to be away from it unless they can come with me. Right. So how do you balance that? What have you done to make that work?
So I wasn't balancing it very well when the kids were first born. So mine are 6 and 8 years old. I got a son named Ace and a daughter named Nova. Ace stands for Andy, Emma, Casagrande, the ACE, and then Nova, Swedish name. So at first, when they were really small, as you know, they're not really super interactive quite yet. And, not to be
they can't hold a camera. I don't know what's up with it.
Camera, right? And not to be stereotypical, but Emma, she really embraced the motherhood side of things. And I embraced working as much as possible because I needed to make money, because now we had a family. We needed to buy a bigger house. We needed to buy a house. We needed to buy diapers and get health insurance and all this stuff that I never really cared about or thought about. Now we needed 2 cars, and like, anyway, so I worked my ass off when they were very young, to the point, and I would try to be there for birthdays and try to be there for anything else. I was there for both of their births, which was amazing. My wife was nervous because I was in Cape Town and she was about 2 weeks out. She's like, I'm starting to feel things. I'm like, I'm coming home now. So
nice.
I got home, but now I've been super lucky in my career to have built up a huge network of clients, big network of friends and producers, and global sort of connections, to where I can now cherry pick my jobs and say no to the jobs I don't want to do. Because we all know there's those jobs out there. I do not like reality TV. Yeah. I know it's popular, but I hate filming people, to be honest. Yeah. If I'm not filming animals, I won't do it. It's okay now. I understand the value now of humans in the same frame as an animal. People relate to it, the coexistence factor. There's some sketchy shit we're doing sometimes with the animals. I just posted something crazy yesterday where my friend almost got his hand bitten off.
I saw. And, I mean, he was touching the teeth, it looked like.
Yes. And, it's a double-edged sword. I get it. People will lose respect for me. Sometimes they're like, dude, Andy, I thought you love sharks and you're a conservationist and you're always preaching that we should coexist and not mess with them or respect them. That is the opposite of what you preach. But sometimes I'm just like, hey, you know what? We do stupid shit sometimes. Don't shoot the messenger. Hey, my friend Jimmy is also an amazing guy. Sometimes we also get pressured into doing crazy stuff that we may not do if a camera's not pointed at us.
Well, what was he trying? Was he just trying to touch the nose as it went by?
He was trying, from what I remember, he was trying to open the mouth. So like in South Africa, they would touch the nose and the shark gapes. Like I have a photo behind me.
Teeth come out.
Teeth come out. Yeah. So it was kind of going to be a shot for the Phantom for me. Yeah. But then I noticed I actually pulled out wide because it was taking longer, and I thought, you know what, it's pretty interesting. I'm like, Jimmy's fucking pushing it, man. I don't want to be the guy that films him getting his arm bitten off, but
it would go viral.
Yeah, and I still wouldn't want to get credit for that. But anyway, long story short, he did. He was not expecting it to react that fast. And I've had encounters with sharks where they do react way faster than you expect. And a lot of people, you get so comfortable working with the animals, you forget that, like, hey, they're just kind of letting you be in their liquid space. They're respecting you, but you play with fire, you can get burned, kind of thing. So luckily he was okay. But yeah, I mean, when I post stuff like that, but I also do it because I'm human, man. I'm not perfect. And I think it's interesting. And I also don't think, some people are like, how dare you? When you touch the shark, the bacteria from our hands is going to kill them. I'm like, you don't know anything about sharks if you think. But anyway, at the same time, I'm not here I like to be a proponent of kindness. Sure. I get worked up. I can get angry. I can get frustrated. But I think everyone out there is, not everyone, but I think the majority of the people out there are trying to do good. And again, Shark Week's a double-edged sword. People give me shit all the time. Shark Week, you just demonize sharks. You're just doing it to make money. You don't care about the sharks at all. You just want to be famous. It's like, I was always a cameraman. I became a presenter by accident because someone didn't show up for work one day and they're like, Andy, do you want to be in this show? Can you say 3 words without fucking it up? I'm like, yeah, I can.
Without bleeding.
I just did. Yeah, I'm still bleeding.
No. So, can you say 3 words without bleeding?
Yeah, without bleeding. So I totally by accident ended up on camera. And I think the directors and producer or the audience thought because I have no filter, I end up swearing a little too much. My dad doesn't like that. My brothers say, do you really need to swear? Sometimes Shark Week will just put beeps in there, even if I didn't swear, which is like, really? Right. But I get it. People want that visceral. He didn't
swear enough on this one, so we need to add extra beeps.
Pretty much. Man. It's happened multiple times. So but again, if I really thought I was doing more harm than good, I would stop. Yeah. And I do believe, even when I was watching Shark Week as a kid, you can either get fearful or fascinated. And I believe the majority of the people are fascinated. It's not people that are watching Shark Week that are getting scared, that are murdering sharks and cutting their fins off. Certainly, fear doesn't help. You want to fall in love with something to care about it, but that's a whole other conversation. Well, shark conservation.
And it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously you do a lot of Shark Week. I mean, Shark Week, I would say, is probably. I mean, what would you say in terms of percentage of what you film Shark Week is?
Oh, geez. When I used to work on staff at National Geographic, and I did a ton of topside long lens stuff on the Phantom from all those things I had mentioned, polar bears, cheetahs, everything else. But when I left Nat Geo, not left, when I kept getting calls from Discovery when I was on staff at Nat Geo, and that's
Right.
taboo. You cannot work for the enemy when you're on staff. As soon as I went freelance, I was fair game to do Shark Week. So I started as a cameraman, and then I accidentally ended up in a show. And then they started calling me every year. We're like, hey, can you do this show, this show? I mean, Shark Week will do 20, 30, 40 hours of shark programming a year. So
it's
as
crazy.
a filmmaker, I mean, you know, what is there?
How could you
one
turn that
grizzly
down?
bear film a year?
Yeah,
What'd you say?
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, one line,
if you're
one
lucky.
good line film. So it's a great industry to be in if you want to get work and you love sharks and you love the water. But I would say, as of late, it's 85%. And then I'll do the occasional slow-mo commercial or shoot, or I'll do a passion project or or my own thing or whatever. But it's kind of hard to turn down. Like, hey, Andy, we want to send you to New Zealand to film a new population of great white, a new hotspot, or we want to send you to the Arctic to do this photo. So,
and it's those experiences you got in it for, right? I mean, going way back, like you said, that's what you wanted to do. And now here you are being offered the primo of career jobs every year to go and do what you want to do. How could you not turn that down? What do you think in terms of the vilification, right, that people think of sharks in general, like wolves, sharks, they're vilified because all we hear about is, on the main news is, someone got bitten in Byron Bay, Australia. Yeah. Someone got bitten off of Durban, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but how about the 25 million sharks that peacefully swam by the shore this morning?
Imagine if they announced on the news someone died from a heart attack or a car crash. Like, exactly. Another person died. But like, your fucking car is so much more dangerous. Popcorn, hot dogs. And we've all heard these analogies, but it's so true. Yeah. And you don't hear the good stories. You only hear the bad. I mean, the reality is if sharks were interested in eating us and they saw us as a viable prey item, they would be eating us every single day.
All the time.
When in reality, fatalities are usually in the single digits every year. There was one fatal shark attack in America this year, and it was on Christmas Eve, 6 days before the end of the year. It was a great white shark off of Morro Bay, bodyboarder, surfing in a river mouth, murky, dark water. It was raining. There was runoff. All those factors came into play, and unfortunately, the shark came up. I mean, they're not actively looking for bodyboarders to eat. They're looking for seals and other things. So
they don't want that toothpick in their mouth at the same time as that meat.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy way that we think about these things in general. So in terms of Shark Week, how do you think the visibility of Shark Week and learning about sharks and education and awareness and all that kind of stuff plays into people becoming more understanding of what a shark is, that it's an apex predator of the ocean, that it has a reason for being there, and when these things happen, we are in their space. So,
100%. And it is tough for some people to navigate, because I have seen years, and Shark Week has gone some years it's super sciencey. Some years it's Megalodon's back and it's alive and the whole world's freaking out because half of them believe Megalodon's still around. Even me, I made a joke about Megalodon biting this shark, and I also joked that it could have been Bigfoot or Shaquille O'Neal, and people still got pissed. They're like, I can't believe you're spreading that misinformation about Megalodon. I'm like, Jesus, like, I didn't realize Instagram was only for strictly clinical conversations. Like, I'll save my jokes for LinkedIn or something. But anyway, I think one thing I have to say about Shark Week, which a really good friend of mine, Jeff Kerr, who is a legendary Shark Week producer, who is the Air Jaws inventor. He basically started that franchise of Air Jaws. He said, listen, man, when people talk trash on Shark Week, just basically tell them this. Like, do you guys remember the movie Jaws? When Jaws came out, the whole world became completely petrified, completely irrationally, unbelievably afraid of sharks, to the point where you were a hero if you went out and murdered sharks. Montauk, up in New York, up in Cape Cod, you'd go catch a shark, put it up on a dock. I'm a badass. I'm saving our children. I'm ridding our oceans of this horrible demon. And now Shark Week came along in the 80s, I believe, slowly. And still, when they started out, it was a lot of blood and guts, and people were watching because it was like, okay, here's sharks. I remember Jaws. Jaws was in the 70s. And anyway, as Shark Week continued, it slowly started to develop this cult following of people that every year they had Shark Week parties. They couldn't wait. That was their best week of the year. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where there's thousands of Instagram groups, thousands of shark conservation groups, not just because of Shark Week, but it gives a unified front for people to see and put sharks to be on the front of their radar. And they've become the most famous wildlife creatures on the planet, even more famous than some Hollywood actors.
Yeah.
And now when people kill sharks, drag them behind the boat, burn them, cut their fins off, and if it goes on the internet, these people get death threats. They get the federal fish and game, they get the FBI, the police check them down because people won't stand for it.
Yeah.
Certainly there's douchebags out there that still hate sharks, still want to kill them. And I was going to say that's fine, but it is not fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, all of that, I think that's so clear these days. I mean, you know, raising awareness, however it works. I mean, you could, you know, looking at Steve Irwin, right? Steve Irwin was someone who came along and he got a lot of backlash because of what he was doing. But if you look at the good he did in terms of awareness for wildlife, then there's times when he did stuff that was unnecessary. But the awareness for the people who would never have watched a wildlife show is immense. The kids who were never into wildlife, the people who, you know, just wasn't their thing, watching natural history, now watch natural history because they relate to it more. And, you know, you got Coyote Peterson now on YouTube, you know, who's doing epic shows, who's, you know, got massive following because he's doing something very similar and people can relate to that. I'm
glad you brought that up because, you know, it's easy to stereotype people. I saw one video of the guy and he gets bit by this giant thing and he's screaming and crying and freaking out. I'm like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Then I started watching, actually, I only don't watch YouTube too much. Then I met with another good friend of mine, a YouTuber. He's like, his name came up, Coyote Peterson, and he started speaking really highly of him and about the education. I'm like, really? I thought the dude just gets bit by things for clickbait. He's like, no, he does that, but look at his other stuff. I watched his other stuff. I'm like, actually, he does teach a lot. He's really passionate. Sure, you're going to get the clickbait, but like you said, with Steve Irwin, some people are like, there's absolutely no reason to jump on that crocodile. He didn't have to do it. But because he did it, millions of people saw it. Little kids were inspired. Like, you got to take the good with the bad, the bad with the good. As long as you're doing more good than bad, I believe.
You can't have it both ways. Yeah, there's got to be, like you said, clickbait. I mean, Coyote Peterson, when they started that, I'm pretty sure, and one day we'll have him on the podcast, but I'm pretty sure that was their ethos. They're like, look, let's get stung by something that's pretty nasty. It's going to go viral, and then we can do what we want to do, which is the educational side. We want to show this stuff how great it is. I mean, it's... You know, people like myself, right? We can make videos. I've made numerous incredible videos about wildlife. I put them on and they get a couple of thousand views, right? And it's just like, wow, why do people... And now I've got this one video I shot of a black bear walking in an urban environment. That's one of my specialties. And it walked around a house and a guy came out of his house at the same time. They see each other and they both freak out and run the other way, right? It's had over 23 million views on YouTube. It's about 20 seconds long.
That's the thing.
But it's like, how do you, as a creator, your mind starts going to this place of like, how do I morph that? Because I can't keep making stuff that no one is watching, however good it is, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that's where Shark Week is. It knows what works. The producers know what works.
I love BBC. I love Planet Earth. So I could sit there and listen to Attenborough for hours. I had the honor of meeting David, shooting really quick sequence that never made the light of day, but he was such an amazing dude. And I'm the kind of person that appreciates natural history with no fucking people. But at the same time, again, you can post that on your YouTube channel and people are like, click, scroll. What's that? That looks like a guy's going to get his head bitten off. 6-second shot. Whoa. It's just how it works. Like, you can't really, you can have both. I think Steve Batchel does an amazing job. Yeah. I think a lot of the British presenters do an amazing job of giving you enough of the energy, enough of the excitement, but a ton of the information and all the beautiful imagery. So again,
it's a fine line. It's hard to know really how to do it because you know there is this side that you go, okay, I want to make really good informational videos that everyone's going to love. But people just, as you say, it's not the way our marketing I mean, everyone, including the BBC, have had to re-evaluate marketing for Planet Earth. You know, they had to stand back for the first Planet Earth and say, okay, we need to work out how the heck we get this stuff on social media and make people take note. And, you know, I think with 2, they had like Radiohead do the music for the trailer, right? Yeah. And it's like Radiohead. And it's like, wow, okay, that's one way. That's like getting a different audience in right away, right? And it was fantastic. But it's looking at those ways of how do you do it? Because we don't all want to sit around making stuff we can't sit around making stuff no one's watching, right? So
I will have to say it was a huge, I had this experience at National Geographic once, one of my very first months there. I was invited into a development meeting, and they're like, Andy, you know, you're new to the table. Like, what would you want to do? I'm like, oh man, I would like to make the ultimate film about sharks and how, you know, we need to respect them in the shark fin soup trade and this and that. And like, I noticed immediately as I started talking about conservation, everyone just started to glaze over. And then like, oh, that's really cool. Thanks, Andy. And then later my buddy told me, he's like, listen, dude, Nat Geo right now doesn't do the C.
I was going to say, he wasn't given the memo.
They're like, they don't do conservation as in they do it, but you can't hit someone over the head with bloody sharks all day long, because people at their regular jobs in real life, it's hard enough at work, and some people are depressed. The last thing you want to do when they come home is turn on the TV and get more depressed. Yeah. They want to see something entertaining, something exciting. They want to learn something. Sure, you can, and that is kind of how a lot of these programs are doing. The last 20 seconds, and these sharks are critical to the environment. They need to be protected. Do everything we can. Check out discovery.com, blah, blah, blah. Over. Next, breaching shark shot, taking a baby's head off. Up next on Baby Killer.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of being stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because you know you need it, but and you know, the nice thing now is obviously everyone is turning to conservation. I mean, now networks it's not the dirty word it used to be. It's now more. Now we've got these SOVD platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime and what have you, where people can choose. You don't have to go, what's on at 8 o'clock on BBC One or on Animal Planet, or it's like, heck, you just choose what you want. And I find what's incredible about that is now we're seeing Indian movies, we're seeing British, we're seeing Scandinavian, we're seeing Korean. All those things are taking off with an American audience on Netflix, which the networks never thought would happen. And so that's why, you know, when I was a presenter for 8 years with Nat Geo for National Geographic International, right? So my shows went to 147 countries, translated into 25 languages, didn't come to North America. So no one in North America had any idea, because North America didn't want a British guy on their TV, right?
Which is bullshit, because all the American girls love that British accent.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody likes that guy who's been throwing the big parties over in London right now, or whatever's going on with that whole Boris thing. But whatever. I don't.
No, I mean, it's changed now. It's changed. We're a the world has got much smaller. We're now multinational in terms of TV programming. I think it's fantastic because it's opened it up, and conservation's no longer a dirty word. And I think, you know, we've seen lots of success with some of the undercover shark shows. You know, The Cove with the dolphins and what have you was huge. So have you done undercover work? I think you've got that on your website, haven't you? Have you ever done any actual kind of going in undercover?
Funny that you say about the website. I'm literally building a new website for a different project right now, and I looked at my old website. It's like TV commercials, undercover.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, I did a few things.
We'll wash your calf. Yeah.
I need to remove. I remember I went on there once and it still said HGTV production. I'm like, yeah. So yeah. Some of the undercover stuff was basically with some shark friends. There was Rob Stewart. There's these guys. I mean, I am the, how do I say it? I'm a conservationist, but I'm not an accomplished one. As in, I try, but there are guys like Sean Heinrichs, Paul Nicklin, Rob Stewart, these guys that live and breathe it. And I will never try to be someone I'm not. I sometimes feel guilty that I'm not doing more, but it's just the way my mind works. And I also, if I was just pure conservation, I think I'd get burned out and start murdering people. I just start to internalize it, and I can't. So I try to support them in every way I can, and try to use the social media and my just sarcastic, unfiltered nature to just get people to listen. And if they don't want to listen, I mean, who am I? Another person with an opinion. Sure. But I do have a lot of experience with animals, and I've realized that they're way more polite, they're way more professional than humans often are. And you can, if you spend enough time with them, you can learn to really get to know them, get amazing footage of them, get amazing sequences, and share that with the world to where they realize, wow, you know what, they really aren't these horrific animals. It's we're you just got to turn the camera around, and you'll find the monsters. But you know, I also try to not demonize people as well, because you alienate them. They're like, screw you, man. We're the top species, and if all the sharks disappear, at least we're still here. It's like, well, it's super connected, and it's not going to work that way. But anyway.
Well, okay, let's move on. No, I hear all of that with you. You know, funnily enough, I was just having a catch-up conversation, which are like revisiting old podcast guests who were on in the last few years and doing it for our Patreon members. So it's like, if you're a member of our Patreon account, you get these other catch-up conversations. And Stephanie has kind of left the TV. Well, she was the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom host.
Yes.
And she's awesome. Yeah, she's great. And she's now the educational officer for, I'm not sure that's her title actually, but she's working with the Endangered Wolf Center. And we were just talking yesterday about burnout and about the way that, you know, climate change, conservation issues, all of this, that when you're in that world and seeing it every day, it affects you so unbelievably emotionally and deep down that after a while, you wonder, you don't see a way out of it. You don't see how we're going to fix it. It's too much.
You're pessimistic, and it's like a downward spiral. Some people excel at it. I think like Sean Heinrichs is a juggernaut. Like, talk about Undercover and the stuff that those guys have done, and Louis Sahoyas and all those guys. Like, they do amazing stuff, and I'd love to support them and try. I remember for the longest time, Sean was trying to break into Nat Geo, and he was bringing all these conservation stories, and I didn't really have the heart to tell him. I'm like, bro, they're not doing that right now. They're doing it a little bit, but you got to
kind of hide it. It's got to be under the surface. Built into it. Well, okay, let's move on. Let's change it. Let's go over to technology, because I know you're a huge technology guy. I can tell that by your workshop you're in right now. And also, you know, some of the clips you got, and funnily enough, when you was talking about your website, when you go on there, half the videos you have under your video link, there's no video. They're all blanked out. They've all been taken away.
It's so bad.
So to anyone listening, don't go to Andy's website until he updates it.
or go to my Grindr account or something.
There you go.
Instagram is where I keep most active. So
there you go.
I'm gonna spend some time on that.
Yeah, there you go.
My dad, he's like, dude, I'll build your website. I'm like, sentimental. I love. But anyway,
well, and the you know, it used to be that we had websites purely for getting work, right? It was like a CV. And so you put this website up and you send people there, and this going to I'll open up a conversation. Now it's not really like that. You've got enough work. You don't need to have it up saying you do HD productions.
That's the thing. I try to, if people ask like, what's your latest projects? I'll send them some YouTube videos or Instagram or whatever. Try to keep it real. But yeah, exactly. It used to be our CV. I used to have all my gear there. Update. Okay, I got a Canon 5D Mark II now, and I've got this.
That's still there. Yeah.
Wireless. Oh, it is. Okay, good. I'm sure I still have like that.
I really want to hire you at some point to come and film on the 5D in HD. Would be great if you can do HD. That'd be awesome.
I love it.
So you do have the Phantom Flex on there, though, and you do have the red weapon, and you do have a dragon. So we're going to talk about that. So first of all, let's have your updated camera list right now as to what you're filming on.
My go-to as of the past couple of years has been the 8K red weapon helium sensor. You know, the Monstro was there, then the Komodo came out, now the Raptor. Like, it's so, I still own my Dragon. I have like a camera museum actually in my house that I converted a pantry into this. All this stuff can kind of be in the elements. I'm in my garage in Florida, so I shouldn't give my address out or anything, but it's not really air conditioned. I kind of have a little air conditioning here, but anything in here is mostly dive gear, stuff that can be out in the field and in the elements. And then I keep all my electronic stuff really. But yeah, I have a Phantom Flex 4K. amazing camera. It actually lives at a rental house in Miami because the wildlife world is, you know, kind of pick and choose. Occasionally I'll get a few jobs with it, but Miami's
That's
tons
an
of
expensive. I mean, that's like $150,000 camera.
It was. I bought it like 10 years ago. It was a huge investment, but I had a lot of work for it lined up already. And even the BBC would dry hire it. Nat Geo would dry hire it. I would get a lot of work where they would hire me, all the jumping slow-mo Shark Week stuff. Yeah. And then that kind of like, you know, I think Alistair Fothergill killed it. He's like, slow motion's not cool anymore. Right. It's too much. We're not going to shoot anything in slow motion anymore because it cheapens the. I forget what he said. I respect those guys. Silverback, all those guys. They never hire me because I'm not good enough, and I'm okay with that. But bottom line is, I have a Flex 4K, which is an amazing camera. My go-to for underwater is 8K helium, but I also love GoPros. I mean, I've been with the GoPro family for 10 years, and I don't just say it because I'm sponsored by them and I'm part of their family. I'm just amazed at the footage I can get. I always have a GoPro mounted to my Reds underwater, one usually pointing back because I'm usually in the film and there's not usually another cameraman shooting me. And the quality, I had this show actually with Michael Phelps once. We tagged this baby tiger shark. They named it after him. There was this big scene, and I'm shooting it all on my Red over in the Bahamas. And just as you know, it's taking forever. They tag it, and then the tag's being weird, and I'm filming. And then I look down at my Red. I'm like, holy shit, I have 3% of my card left. Don't tell me I'm going to run out of my card right when they release Boomer. They named the tiger shark after his son. And I'm like, oh, my God. Luckily, I had a GoPro. I think it was a Hero 7 at the time, shooting 4K 60, dialed in with ProTune, low sharpness, low ISO, all the settings to get it
to look good.
And I read, I didn't say a word because if I did, it would have taken me 20 minutes to dry the housing, break it up. I rolled on the GoPro, still pretended I'm shooting on the Red. I got the shot of the shark swimming away. I told the director, he's a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, bro, I ran out of my Red card right during the release. He's like, what? I'm like, don't worry. I got it all on the GoPro and I nailed it. I know I did. He's like, I hope so. He called me during the edit. He's like, dude, it cuts seamlessly. Great job. I'm so glad you did that. So that's a little testament that a lot of people get intimidated by this profession because they think, I can't afford a $150,000 camera. I can't afford a $50,000 Red camera. I can't even afford hopefully you can afford a $300 GoPro. And if you can't, there's always a way. I mean, everyone now, not everyone, but I think read somewhere, Elon Musk just posts like 80% of humans own a cell phone. Yeah. And I would say most of them probably still are not, have good cameras. Yeah. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Sure.
So you could still make amazing imagery just with your phone, just with a GoPro. And I hate it when people try to make filmmaking. I never went to film school, and there's no dig at like people that did or the Hollywood cine snob types. That was just a dig. Bottom line is, I think anyone can get into anything if you put your mind to it, and you're passionate, and you work hard, and you're kind. That's the other thing I learned. You can be the best cameraman in the world, but if you're a dick and you're not nice to work with and you're arrogant and you treat the staff or the crew with disrespect, or you're just
never work again,
you're not going to get many calls. You could be the greatest shooter on earth. So I try to instill that to a lot of people. I run these expeditions every year at Guadalupe. I call them cinema science expeditions because it's basically the concept of using cinematography and technology to convey and perpetuate science and conservation. Because video data, in my opinion, is the most powerful data. Essentially, camera footage, you're seeing what the shark does. You're getting, you can even get the depth, the temperature, all that from these cameras these days. So you could be essentially contributing to science and research just by being a filmmaker or a cinema scientist. And it's cool because I have like a variety of different styles of people that come out. And they all eventually go away saying, that was the greatest experience of my life. And I'm like, you're just saying that. They're like, and it's not because of me. It's because of the great white sharks and they're. I mean, it's hard to. They're hard to.
Blowing. Rick Rosenthal. He was the first guest I had on the show a few years back, and he was talking about the sail. He did all the sail fin stuff for Planet Earth, and obviously a ton of other stuff. Right, great stuff. But he was, what I loved about that episode is he said right at near the beginning, he said he was a marine biologist. He went there, he wrote a bunch of scientific papers, and 12 people, he said, you know, as a joke, 12 people read those papers. He said all of films combined have had over 1 billion views.
There you go.
know, and he said that there's just no looking back. As a scientist with a camera, you are a powerful person in the world of conservation.
Yes.
And so,
no, I meant to make that same point when I decided to not become a scientist. And again, I have some of my best friends are great scientists, and I work with scientists constantly, and I massive respect for scientists. I mean, there's some good and bad ones, just like there's some good and bad filmmakers. But that's the thing. If you write the best scientific paper on earth and it gets published in Nature or Science, I'm not going to quote the readership and the numbers, but the magnitude of your films being exposed to the world is exponential when it compared to someone reading a scientific journal. If you make a film that highlights the abstract in that paper and 1 billion people see it on YouTube, you're going to get way more momentum behind your campaign, your initiative, or whatever you're trying to do to get accomplished. So I think it's great. And Rick's a great guy. I've met him multiple times and shot with him in the field, but he always gets amazing footage. He's a funny dude. And also him and his wife, Katya, I think it is. They're a husband and wife team.
That's right.
So, and I think she's a blonde Swede as well.
She is,
cool.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Yeah, no, they're super cool, and I mean, it's I just love that way of thinking about it. Like a camera these days is, I mean, especially now because of social media, because of YouTube, because there is no barrier to entry. Like you were saying, a GoPro, a phone. There's no barrier to distribution like there used to be. I mean, 20 years ago, if you had a camera, what do you do with it? You put it on a hard drive and it sat here. You know, that was it. But now you make look at, again, Coyote Peterson. Look at the guys out there who have millions of people following him. I mean, he's getting more viewership than most network TV shows, right?
And like Mr. Beast. My son loves Mark Rover, Mr. Beast. And at first I was like, Mr. Beast, what kind of weird name is that? Is this guy? And then he's doing a bunch of Minecraft. Oh, wait, he just gave $10,000 to a homeless guy. Wait, he just gave away this. He started Team Trees, Team Seas. It's like these YouTubers are changing the fucking world. And at first I used to tell people 10 years ago, like, don't film like a YouTuber, shaky, handheld, weird, stupid. Like now these YouTubers are paving the way and pioneering and getting. Mr. Beast got more views on his Squid Game video than Squid Game did on fucking Netflix.
Right. I mean, that's what's insane. And he filmed it with well, he's probably got a good camera now, but he certainly didn't have a rig like they had, right? No, I mean, it's another world. It's another world. You know, I filmed, and this is another funny thing, because I saw on your website you also have an EX1.
I have two of them.
You still have two?
That's still on there? Oh,
that's still on there. So I love that camera. I had that camera for years. I mean, it was a great camera.
The little swivel mount, the whole thing, compact. I broke mine in half on a polar bear shoot.
That one didn't have the swivel on it. Mine didn't. It was that. I think that was the 700, the one that came out after the NS 700. The EX1 did it have a swivel on it?
It does have a swivel. I got two in the closet.
Oh, I'm just forgetting. Sorry.
No, it was just a swivel mount because when you put it in the housing, you had to adjust it 45 degrees.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I filmed bears with that for a long time. It was so nice because it was so compact. Everything was there. No wires hanging off it or anything like that. Run in a field, chase a bear around some urban areas. Not chase it, but, follow it. And I filmed this incredible sequence of this bear climbing in pickup trucks, right? Going around homes in their garbage cans and barbecues and you name it. All on that. I had sticks with me, some lightweight sticks. Get down. I was getting these immaculate shots. And I've been, selling them on footage for news and for documentaries and all sorts. And then one day, I think the first people who came and bought like 5 or 6 clips from me, they came and said, "Oh, we love this. This is fantastic. Have you got any more that's really shaky? Have you got any that's really shaky?" And I'm like, do you know how long I worked to get that stuff to look immaculate? And they're like, yeah, it just needs more drama. So I'm like, you got to do it in post.
That's so true. We went through that phase where it was like Rocksteady, Ronford Baker sticks, 150 mil head, super solid PBS pans, tilts, this to like, get behind the bushes. I want the POV of the bear. Shake it a little. Run with the camera. the more Parkinson's disease you have, the better.
Right.
That's not
Yeah, I mean, had I had a phone or a GoPro, they would have bought. I mean, I was selling those $500 a clip, right? Back in the day when, you know, that,
Yeah.
I mean, you still can now for good footage, but it's, you know,
Right.
there's just a plethora of stuff out there. But the
Inundated.
irony is everyone can film that stuff with their phones now. And
Yep.
they're happy with it. Ironically, that some of the bears that I've been filming, the one bear actually that I've been filming, just made its Hollywood debut on that film Don't Look Up with Leonardo
way.
DiCaprio. That right at
Oh
the
yeah,
end.
there's a bear in that
in a-
montage of what people are doing before
at
they
the
die.
end. Yeah, and that is the bear that I've been following.
No
I
way.
mean, there's some talk about him actually having been euthanized now because of a dangerous situation, but that bear was taken by someone's cell phone in I won't say where, but in a Safeway store, and that's the bear that I've been tracking. And and the irony is that someone's phone footage ended up in a Hollywood movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, right, and Jennifer Lawrence. So it just shows you it's good enough for that montage sequence, right?
And just another comment on that. There was a series I worked on for called Bering Sea Gold up in Alaska about gold miners dredging under the Bering Sea. And one of the DPs, he's also a really high-powered DP, Cameron Clendenning, amazing dude, hardcore. He was at a bar one night, and a bar fight broke out amongst the cast. He broke out his iPhone and filmed it, and it is in the opening sequence of every Bering, like it's in the sizzle for the show on an iPhone. Yeah, and shot them all on Alexa's Red camera, so the whole show shot in super ultra HD, and his iPhone is intermixed, and they like that gritty. I mean, you wouldn't want to shoot a bar fight on sticks and a kick-ass.
Right, exactly, yeah. No, I think this is great news for up-and-coming filmmakers, because one of the things I did, my wife is a mountain lion biologist, right? We together, when we met and when I moved over, and we spent the first 7 years doing, 5 years doing field work, 7 years for the project. In 5 years, her and I captured and collared 72 mountain lions. Right, putting GPS collars on.
Where? Like all
in Nevada. West? It was in Nevada.
Wow.
So the Tahoe Basin, yeah.
Wow.
And so we, and it was the first lion research done in 40 years in Nevada. So it was kind of updating everything they knew about movement and prey selection and stuff like that. But I filmed a ton of stuff, most of it on the EX1R, right? When I had that little cam. And for years after, we didn't do anything with it. And then when we started looking at doing stuff, and the camera world has just changed, you know, new cameras started coming out like crazy. This is back in 2007 through about 2012. And you know, I really worried. I'm like, God, if I try and do anything with this now, it's some of it's 720, some's 1080, but it's like 35 megabits. It's like, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And now it's turned the other way. Now I'm like, well, look, if I film the other stuff on an FS7 or a Red, like the interviews, that stuff fits in perfectly, because that is what people are looking for now. They want this good mixture. You got a GoPro in there, fantastic. You got some phone footage, great. You know,
one of my best-selling shots of all time. It was on a GoPro Hero 1 two of my best-selling shots, both on GoPro Hero 1s. When I look at them now, I'm mind-blowing. Like, how could did we even use this footage? Yeah. And it was a great white shark biting the camera, and an American alligator in the Everglades biting a camera. Both of them like on a broomstick. Yeah. And these shots are told over and over and over again, because it's visceral, it's viral, it's gritty. Yeah. Nobody cares that it was 720 and the most horrible low light camera in history. But now, obviously, the GoPros have made major strides. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's really about, you know,
behavior. Yeah, what's in it, and you get behavior. And actually, that's a good segue into, you know, you are someone who has spent a ton of time with wildlife, right? You on your website, you're a wildlife expert. How important is that as part of your, you know, there's so many people coming into this world now where, as I say, barrier to entry is gone. It's not the camera, it's not the distribution. Everyone can do it. What do you feel, though, that experience with wildlife brings to the table as a wildlife camera person?
I mean, it's invaluable. There's no substitute for experience, because I don't like calling myself an expert. I'll use quotations around that, and because I call myself a professional because that means I get paid for the work that I do. And I take my job professionally and I try to do expert work. But the reality is, like, as I said, there's no substitute for experience. And I've spent thousands of hours in the water with all types of species of sharks. And I've met a handful of scientists that are experts and they've never been underwater with that species they're an expert in. And again, they're going to write a way better research paper and they're going to get published and they are doing their part. They're helping with the movement. But again, there's no substitute for being in the field, seeing it yourself and living it. But sometimes people are like, how the hell am I going to get polar bear experience if I want to specialize in polar bears? Read books, watch videos, talk to polar bear scientists. Go see polar bears eventually. I remember I got sent to India to make a king cobra film with my buddy Andy Mitchell, and I was so pumped. And then I realized I don't know anything about king cobras. I know they're a big ass snake with a lot of venom and they can kill me. So I better learn, how fast can they move? How fast can they strike? How tall can they stand? What's their range?
Right, which is really important as a camera person.
How do you not piss them off? And so I did as much book work as I could. I read a lot. I started reading on forums, read every Nat Geo article, all the Discovery, all the Beeb articles, everything. But you could only learn so much from books as well. Then I started watching the videos that had been made in the past. And then if you've ever made a snake film or you know them, a lot of them, you know, you even... The wild snakes are very hard to film. So they'll often use snake wranglers. We actually were working a film with Ram Whitaker. He's a knight, Sir Ram Whitaker in India. And it was called Serpent King. And they developed this king cobra squad, which would go around India because king cobras would get up in your rafter, in your bathtub, in your toilet, under your bed.
Drop down on you.
It dropped down.
The toilet.
Or
come out the toilet. Right.
Yeah. So, and as you know, they're not malicious. They're snakes. They don't want really anything to do with people. They're there to eat other snakes. They're snake eaters. So anywhere you're going to have rats, you'll have king snakes, rat snakes, you'll have corn snakes, whatever it is, and the kings will come and eat those snakes. So they developed a cobra squad. They would go in, catch the kings, pull them out of the house, and then relocate them. And it was really fascinating to watch the king cobra squad work because they were very cavalier. I thought so. King, they'd be striking at them, they'd be doing this. I was like, you guys don't need to do this for the camera. Like, no, this is how we do it. Anyway, then they would relocate them, and sure enough, the kings had this homing sense, and they would end up back in these same regions after being relocated. I don't know about hundreds of kilometers, but kilometers and kilometers away. And I learned a lot about kings, and it was really cool. But again, no expert, but I would actually like to ask you, because I remember there was an amazing cameraman named Bob Cranston. And he passed away a couple of years ago, but he taught me a lot about the business. And this is a funny story. He taught me, this was not the story I was going to tell, but he taught me, I was starting to ask him, like, what should I charge as a cameraman? I don't know. I don't know my worth. I'm just starting out. He's like, listen, well, there's 3 different rates you should have. There's the standard rate, which is going to be pegged against other cameramen of your experience. It's pretty well known. The networks are going to know it. They're going to kind of offer you what they're going to offer. That's kind of a standard rate. Then there's the good guy rate. He's your best buddy. He's making a conservation film about pandas or the last snow leopard. He has no money, but you got the gear. He's going to cover your expenses. If it sells, you guys might make something, but it's the good guy rate. You're pretty much going to work for free. Then there's the asshole rate. You don't want to do the job. You don't like the director. You hate the idea. You say the highest possible rate you can imagine without.
And then double it.
And then double it. Hoping that they're going to say no. But if they say yes, you're like, all right, well, at least I'm getting a paycheck. But Bob also kind of said, he told me it was kind of funny because it sort of, I said, hey, man, like, should I specialize in sharks? Because I love them so much. He's like, well, if you specialize in sharks, you're never going to get a call to shoot lions again. Because I was doing lions and the polar bears. You're never going to get a call to do this. But he's like, hey, if you want to do sharks and that's what you want to do, you should specialize. But he's like, it's also nice to do other things, Humboldt squid, do whales or whatever. It turns out I ended up specializing in sharks, and I don't get those calls much anymore for the other species. But I recommend to people out there that are starting out is to try a little bit of everything. I did do a ton of time lapse, a ton of long lens, drone stuff, underwater, topside. and I learned what I like and don't like. I love drones. I love remote stuff. I love undercover. Just kidding. I love, but then, you know, time and time again, I find myself on shark shoots with my 2D camera, my Red, my workhorse. And then there's someone else flying drones, someone else doing time lapse, someone else that has specialized in that field. Yeah. So as people that are up and coming, I recommend try a little bit of everything. Don't just try to force yourself into what you really want to do unless you really, really only know you want to do that, because you might find that you love time lapse. I still love time lapse, and I still know how to do it. I love drones, like I said. So you may find yourself eventually being kind of, you know, specialized by the industry. Because, as you know, the BBC has their long lens guys, their Raptor guys, their rope access guys, their cave rebreather dudes. I'm actually working on a rebreather project right now. I was reluctant to sign on for it, but I just did my training this weekend. I was already certified. I've got 2 rebreathers here in the garage that have been collecting dust for 10 years.
Wow.
I had 2 close friends die on rebreathers. And it's not that it was just the rebreather's fault. There's always some element of human error from what I've seen. Not always, but from what I've seen. So anyway, that was a ramble, other than like when people often ask me like, hey, should I specialize, or how do I get in the business? I'm like, get bags for some guy, bring in the coffee. Everyone's got to start somewhere. I started as an unpaid research cameraman shooting dorsal fin IDs, playing my shark song to make 100 Rand a day if I was lucky, which was $14 back then a day. But that was enough to buy beer, food, and have the most amazing time of my life learning about sharks. Yeah. I wish it was $7 a day. Then it could be like The Rock, you know, because he only had $7. Now he's the coolest, awesomest dude in the world.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there that's watching this that wants any advice from me, from Jake, from anyone, obviously, Jake, I know you probably do some of these intro, outro things, but I'm really passionate about sharing my stories about trying to demystify that you don't have to be the best cameraman, camerawoman, anything in the world. If you work hard, you're passionate, you love something, you can accomplish a lot. And we're here to help you. Hit us up on whatever, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever.
Just not your website.
I think just don't not go to my website. I'm going to jump on there tonight and at least take off the EX1. Okay. Oh, Jake, man, I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, man. I'm going to jump on and listen to the rest of these, and let me know when it broadcasts or airs, and I'll shout it out and listen to it, and I appreciate it, man.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. Thanks. I know you're busy. Thanks for taking time out. Awesome. We'll chat again soon. Cheers.
Yeah, man. Take care. Cheers. See you guys.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Master Wildlife Filmmaking Podcast. If you did, please consider leaving a rating, a comment, and please subscribe if you haven't already done so. You know, by leaving ratings on your favorite places where you get your podcasts from really helps, because it helps the Google machine find these podcast episodes. It helps rate them. It helps rank them. It just helps in general with more listeners finding. And, you know, whenever I find a new podcast, I like to look at the reviews, the ratings, see what people think to it. So it'd really help me out if you could leave a rating. Apple Podcasts, great place to do it. Just go on there. Write something in there. Tell us what you thought. Could be just about the podcast in general or a particular episode. Really appreciate it if you can do that. And also, if you are serious about a career in wildlife filmmaking, then head over to jakewillers.com and check out all the free trainings that I have for you there. Not only are there free trainings, it's a place to go to find out about how you can break into the industry. I have the mentoring group there where you can join and really ask me questions on a weekly basis about the industry and what you need to do to break into it. It's also the home to the podcast. If you go to the podcast link, you will find all of these podcast episodes, RSS feeds. You can listen to them there. You can read bios of my guests. You can find all the links of how to contact guests. And you can find the YouTube links as well, so you can go and watch the guests. You can watch these episodes on YouTube. Again, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'll see you next time.